Hello, my lovely people of the crafting universe. Today I will be showing you an art journal page which was inspired by this painting. Unfortunately, I could not find the painter who painted this beautiful folk art pig, but there are several pictures like this available on internet with different types of animals, and I really liked the calmness of the picture. And this is what I decided to repeat in my art journal page, the sense of calmness. I am starting with a gel print from my stash, which has a lot of gold color on it. My idea was, since the art journal page will not have a lot of dimension, to make something that looks like a frame and at the same time serves as a tiny bit of additional dimension. So I found in my stash a gel print which had a lot of gold on it. You know just how my brain works. I needed the frames, so frames are usually golden, so I took out a golden gel print just to make some kind of choice. So I usually try to find the logic in my head that helps me to make a choice. So how to choose from hundreds and hundreds of gel prints. So this is how I made a choice. And I tore some strips using a ruler, and I'm gluing them all around the page. I used the ruler just to have a slightly uneven edge, not a very straight edge. And I'm gluing the paper down using the heavy gel medium. As you know, I like to use it a lot because it doesn't soak into the paper. It is quite difficult to use because it's very thick, but it doesn't crinkle the paper, so here are the benefits. Now I'm taking a separate piece of paper which is quite thick cardstock, and I'm painting it with a layer of gesso. I will be using Brusho powders, which is basically pure pigment soluble by water. And these powders are magic because each of them consists of different colors. Even if you see that the main color is green or purple, there will be specks of other colors in it, and they are dilutable by water, and they create the most amazing swirls and patterns on your paper. I'm adding water, but the purpose of the gesso underneath was to prevent the pigment from soaking into the water because of what I'm going to do next. So at the moment the colors do not look very impressive or rich, but wait until I will start to put on another layer of gesso. And I'm using my finger because I found that this is the most efficient way of spreading the color, because I like to feel underneath my fingers what the gesso is doing, and not to press at the same time too hard to not to destroy the little specks of color. By that I mean to prevent the little tiny particles of color from uh, disappearing into the main color. So I did the slightly purple, now I'm doing the slightly green, but as you see inside the green there are also yellows and a little bit of purple and teal and light yellows and dark yellows, so you will get a really rich background, but at the same time it will be quite muted because of the gesso. So I really like this technique. It works perfectly to provide a very rich and complex background, but at the same time it's very calm. And as I said, I'm after the calmness in this page. Right now I'm using the smallest script stamp that I could find and two permanent inks in similar colors as my background. I don't have any purple permanent ink, so I chose blue, but it also works very well. And I'm just randomly stamping the text on my background. I did it with blue, and in the bottom part I'm doing it in green with no rhyme and reason, just some little fragments of text here and there to add some additional interest to the background. And now the main part. I sketched an outline of a piggy with a pencil, and now I'm going around it with a pen, a black permanent pen, just doing the outline. It is a piggy, so it's not very difficult. It's just an oval with some square legs and a snout. Oh, and a swirl for for a tail. I'm erasing the pencil mark to leave only the black pen mark. And I will be coloring it using ink. And since I want it to resemble these full card paintings which have this slightly vintagey feel to them, I'm using a brownish yellow ink to color in the silhouette of the pig. There is not much shading going on at this moment because I will be using colored pencils later to give some additional depth to the silhouette of the piggy. And I'm using a blending tool which usually is used for colored pencils. I'm dipping it or touching with it the ink cube and then transferring the ink onto the drawing. I like this method because the other way of doing it would be to press the ink cube onto the work surface and then use a brush or the same blending tool, but in that way I find that I waste a lot of ink. So this way I'm taking only the amount of ink that I need for my painting. So when the background of the piggy is done, I'm using my favorite colored method, which is ordinary colored pencils, and I'm going over the brownish background with several colors to make the coloring more interesting. I'm still not doing a lot of shading as this is not the very realistic depiction of the pig. It's just an outline of a piggy, but still I want it to have some more interesting color. So I'm going over it with pink, with orange, with lighter red, and with deeper red just for some shadows around the legs and the snout. But as I said, color is there not to try to make the piggy look three-dimensional. They are there just to make the drawing interesting and more pleasing to the eye. And then I'm using a black pen to paint in the spots on the piggy. So I'm painting checkerboard spots, just because. And because the background of my page is covered in gesso, it's quite difficult to paint with colored pencils straight on top of it. So I'm taking an ink pencil to draw a shadow First I just very lightly outline the round shadow, and then I'm using a barely wet brush to spread out the ink. And because I don't want it to be too dark, I will be using my cloth to take off part of the ink to lighten up the shadow and not to make the shadow the central piece of the page. I printed out these wings from the um, free image from a free image website, and I cut the wings out. They are printed on ordinary 80-gram printer paper, and I cut them out, and now I glue them to the page using again the heavy gel. When working with thin paper like ordinary printer paper, I always choose this gel again to prevent the paper from wrinkling, as the gel does not soak into the paper. And here's my piggy with wings. Since I already have several layers of pencil on my piggy, I had to use the ink pencil again to add some shadows to the wings. So I'm choosing an orange ink pencil and just adding a little bit of shadow underneath the wings and underneath the belly of the pig. And I'm very happy with how my piggy looks. So it's time to try it out how it will look on my page. And since it is a little bit too big, I will trim it down. I'm not doing it very exactly, I'm just making a small pencil mark and then using my scissors to cut the excess off. I'm not worried that it's not straight, it's not a greeting card, it's an art journal page, so imprecisions are very welcome. And I'm cutting the bottom part in two parts because later I want to keep my sentiments separately. Again, somehow keeping it with the theme of this being a painting. I am preparing my page for stamping, and normally I would not use powder before stamping, but on the art journal page, but since my stamps are quite fiddly and intricate with tiny details, I've decided to use the anti-static powder first. And I'm using these two stamps which have these weird mushrooms and weird flowers, and I think that they will go perfectly with the theme of my page. And I'm using pigment ink because I want to shoot two rabbits with one shot. I want to, since I'm planning to emboss the stamped image, I could have used embossing ink, but I decided to use a pigment ink because the stamp is very intricate, so in case the embossing powder does not stick somewhere to these very tiny intricate details, I will still have my stamped image underneath. So I was trying to be clever here. So black embossing powder, and out comes the embossing tool. And let's the magic of the heat to change the embossing powder into something magical. I did exactly the same at the top of the page, but I did not leave it in the video, just not to make the video unwatchably long. And to tie the stamped and embossed image even more into the page, I'm using a black acrylic paint to paint in the border between the paper, the edge of the paper and the stamped image, to make it one. On the top of the page I'm adding even more details. I wanted something to hang from the top, so there are already these weird flowers hanging, so I'm adding even more flowers. And just because I can, I'm also adding some fish and some mushrooms. The idea made me smile, so that's why I decided to do it. And here with a red alcohol marker, I'm just painting in some separate details. There were some mushrooms and a couple of flowers, just to have this additional touch of color. I'm distressing the edges of my page just using my scissors, and I'm doing the same with the strip, which later will be used for the sentiment. And since I'm trying to not to use too much brown or black on this page, I've decided to go around the page and emphasize the borders not with brown ink as I would normally do, but with teal ink, and I really like how it worked out. I've decided that my page needs some splatters, and in order to do those I'm cutting out a very rough shape of my piggy and the wings. It will be a mask and it does not need to be very precise, and I'm not spending a lot of time of cutting it. I'm just cutting it a rough shape. And some splatters using black acrylic ink. Oh, sorry, black acrylic paint. And since this paper is quite thick and quite heavy, I'm using a serious glue to glue it down to the page. This was the tacky glue. And I will be doing the same also with the sentiment strip, and on goes a book for a couple of hours to make sure that it is really well glued down. And the last touch will be the sentiment, which says, if you cannot convince them, confuse them. And so the last thing to do on the page is to add some white accents. I'm accenting the wings and also adding some smaller and larger dots on the background using white acrylic paint marker. And this is the page for today. I hope it made you smile, and I hope it inspired you to go and create an art journal page of your own. If you like this page, please press the subscribe button and leave a comment. What did you like about this page, and if you would like to see more art journal pages like this. And please have a lovely day. Bye bye.